You're watching Next Pitch, the student athlete playbook for parents raising tomorrow's athletes.
Hi, Anthony Leverett here, host of the Next Pitch podcast. And on behalf of my Emmy Award-winning producer, Jason Cardona, we are thrilled to bring you Megan Rice today. Great interview with her, great perspective. Megan is a former Division I volleyball player and a current AVP professional beach volleyball player, and also coaches club volleyball down in Southern California. Great perspective on a bunch of different things that we talked about, but going through the recruiting process, transferring, getting injured, talked about some mental performance stuff. Really good interview. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Hi, Megan. Welcome to the show. I will have introduced you properly before you came on here today, but thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk a little bit about my story.
Yeah. So before we dive into that, when people meet you on the street these days, how do you introduce yourself? What is what are you doing now? What is your role? And we'll get into all of the things that you're doing, but what are you doing currently?
Right. I mean, the main thing that I'm doing right now is professional beach volleyball. But that sport doesn't make a ton of money, so I wear a lot of hats. I also coach youth indoor club volleyball, and have another couple side hustles.
Yeah. So the beach, we're going to get into the beach here I think I might, if I could go back in time, I'm 51, so there's no chance I'm doing anything new right now, but I might have gotten into beach volleyball. It sounds like a fun way to spend an athletic career instead of in a cold gym. So when you got started in sports, how old were you when you first dove in to being an athlete?
Yeah. So I want to say I was around probably like 5 or 6, and my mom's philosophy was throw them in everything and see what
Yeah.
sticks. And so I did dance, I did sports, music, and sports is what stuck for me. And it started, my first love was basketball. I got into soccer a little bit later and ultimately found myself in volleyball.
So how old were you? So I think off air, you told me that volleyball was the last sport that you came to, which is the one that you're still playing now, ironically. How old were you when you found volleyball, or when volleyball found you?
When I found volleyball, I was in 8th grade. I was 13 at the time, which was really late, apparently, is what my parents were told, is what I was told by all these club coaches. But I really loved it, and I felt like I was able to pick it up quickly, and that was kind of the end of it.
That whole idea that you have to specialize in something at 8 years old, to me, is kind of asinine. We'll talk about more about that towards the end today, but did you continue to play those other sports as you went through high school, or what age did you start? Okay, I know I want to be a college player. This is going to be my future. This is what I want to do with my life. When did that shift happen for you?
So around the time that I played on my middle school team, and I went to my parents, and just after that one season, it was like, I want to switch. And my dad was just beside himself. He's like, you've been playing basketball for years, and I was a great player in the area. And he was so like, what are you doing? I'm like, trust me, I think I can figure this out. And so I kind of just went cold turkey on every other sport I was playing, and just went all in. And luckily my parents supported it and were just like, okay, if this is what you want.
So you did that going into your freshman year. You just dropped everything else, and it was, I'm going to be a volleyball player.
Yep, pretty much.
How much do you think, though, playing those other sports helped you when you got into playing volleyball? Was there some transferable skills that you had learned as just as an athlete, movement and all that stuff, as you got involved in the game?
Absolutely. I think that in basketball, you develop that hand-eye coordination and those fine motor skills that you definitely need in volleyball. And I think playing soccer also helped because there's a lot of footwork involved. So even though I was late to the sport of volleyball, I felt like my hand-eye coordination and just coordination in general were already there. And then it was just about, okay, how do I apply these to this sport and this specific set of skills?
And the recruiting process started pretty early for you, correct? In the world of
Right.
volleyball. I mean, even earlier
Yeah.
even than for most people. What was that like for you? Well, how old were you when you got your first college coach coming, like legitimate, I'm being recruited by this university?
Right. So back when I was being recruited, coaches were allowed to talk to you very early. And so I committed at the very beginning of my sophomore year of high school or end of freshman year. So I was 14 when I
Wow.
verbally committed.
Yeah.
Obviously, they make you wait a couple years to sign, but
Yeah.
at that point, you're pretty much locked in unless something really wrong happens.
Yeah. And what was it about that that made you want to commit at that age? Was it what you were told? Was it your experience there? I mean, you're 14, 15 years old. You barely know what you want for lunch 5 minutes from now, much less what you want to do with your life when you're 18 to 22.
Right. And that's why the rules have changed. That's why college
Yes.
coaches can't talk to girls until they're, I think, juniors now.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense because you're 100% right. I didn't know what I wanted to, and I ended up transferring, which we'll probably get into later.
Yeah.
Um, but at the time when you are offered a full ride scholarship to an amazing school, what seems like, the right thing to do, it just felt like the right thing to do. That's all I can say.
Did it help you? I mean, it's probably some positives from that too. So did people continue to try to recruit you once they knew that you had committed, or did it kind of eliminate that process for you so you could just focus on getting better every single day because you knew that process was done? I don't have to be worried about where I'm going to school.
Yeah, the process usually stops once people hear you're verbally committed. I wish that I had waited because, a couple coaches are like, oh, like I would have offered you, or, you
Yeah.
hear things through the cracks. And
Yeah.
who knows where I would have ended up if I had just waited even one more year. But I think, it's so tough, like I said, to get a for offer at a great school. You just want to take it.
Yeah. So you go through this high school process, you end up graduating. I assume, I don't know what your GPA was when you graduated from high school, but based on the fact that you've graduated with honors from both undergraduate and postgraduate school, I would assume you were a pretty good student all along the way. Is that a correct assumption?
Yeah, I'd say once I was committed, I was lax about like how my studying in high school, but I was always just A's and B's without luckily having to try too hard.
How did you manage that? So I know there's a lot of high performing kids, right? But that are really good at their sport and forget that the education component of this thing really matters. And learning how to balance all of that stuff is one of those really cool things that athletics can teach you, is how to balance different priorities in your life, athletics being one of them, school being one of them, family being one of them. For people that are different. How did you start understanding that academics were important, and how did your parents or you or both come together to make sure that stayed important?
I think it's just a conversation that my parents have always embedded in me of like sports is a great vehicle and a great journey to get to go to a great school and get a degree, but at the end of the day, even people who have, really long careers, it doesn't last forever. And so you do need that backup plan or that safety net for whenever you do finish. And for some people it's right after college, and for me it's happened to be a little bit longer.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that only 3% of all high school athletes receive a scholarship to play college athletics. It is such an important thing for kids to understand. 10% of kids in high school go to college and play in athletics, but only 3% of them actually get a scholarship to play. And so that academic side of things, you're going to have a job someday. You're going to need to get into a good university. Like, really, really staying focused on that is critical through that high school process.
100% agree.
So you get on campus as a freshman. You're there for 1 year. Walk me through that year. Was it an immediate thing for you of, I made a wrong decision? Was it a gradual thing? Was it, this didn't line up with what I thought I was going to get? Like, what was that process like for you, that led you to only being there for 1 year?
Yeah. So when I initially went on my official visit, The team had just won conference. They were kind of on a all-time high, and they all seemed really happy. And maybe I didn't look closely enough to what the team dynamic and the culture was there. But once I arrived, I just realized that the team in general wasn't super happy. And I think, part of that is the coach setting that precedence. Some of it is the upperclassmen. So what affects the dynamic of a team is always tough. But for me, you're doing this every single day. And so you want to be around people who enjoy being there, who are supportive. And I was getting a lot of playing time as a freshman. And so for me, I felt a little torn on the decision, but ultimately I was like, I'd rather go somewhere and not play than play somewhere where the team culture just doesn't feel right. And so that's kind of the turning point for me.
So you're being very nice. You're about your experience there. I can tell, and I won't dig too deep, but I've talked to so many people over the course of my wife being one of them who went to play somewhere and ended up getting in the Pac-10 and stopping playing and losing her scholarship because she couldn't stand what she was going to experience when she went back into the gym that day. And it's one of the reasons why we're doing this. When you talk to kids now that are going through the process, what is it that is so important for the young person and the family to do in that recruiting process? You're never going to get all the information, but to get as much information about what the experience is going to be, like, what do you tell kids now to ask how to go through that recruiting process? What is important to you, knowing what your experience was?
Right. I think what I always tell the kids that I coach is pay really close attention to like how people treat each other on the team, how coaches interact with players. And I'd say my biggest thing that I tell them is try to talk to the upperclassmen who are on their way out.
Mm-hmm.
Because the freshmen who are there are just there. They make it feel like it's your job to tell them how great the school is, and those are usually the players that they put you with the most. But it's really important to talk to the people who have been there for the full experience, or even reaching out to recently graduated players who are there, and just ask them the hard hitting questions, because at the end of the day, they will be honest with you. And programs that have great culture, those people are gonna just glow and tell you how much they love it.
Yeah. And I give kids this, take a note card with you, because when you're 16 years old, it's hard in the moment to look at a 21 or 22-year-old and ask some of those questions. So
Right.
like, get your interview ready. Like, ask, find, what are the 4 or 5 things that, what is my interaction with my coach going to be like? Tell me the truth. What is interaction with the assistant coaches? Are they telling me the truth about what my head coach is actually like? Write down those questions so that when you get in the moment, you don't freeze and say, is this a good place to come to school? Really, really be prepared to ask those so you can get as much information as you possibly can.
Yeah, that's a great advice.
Yeah. So you go through the transfer process, and were you still there when you had to sit out a year when you made that decision to leave, or had that rule changed yet?
It was still in effect. Luckily, I through channels that probably weren't the most legal, I figured out that LMU, which is where I ended up transferring, avoided all of those weird rules. Like they weren't in our conference. We hadn't played them in the last couple years. I can't even remember what some of the other ones were, but there was a very specific set of criteria that if you didn't meet, like you said, you had to sit out a year. But luckily, I was able to avoid that.
And when you went through the recruiting process the second time, when you made the decision, was it just, I'm going to LMU, or was there a much more a longer process for you to figure out where you were going to go?
Basically, when I decided I wanted to transfer, you're supposed to do it in the fall, right after season. And me not knowing that, or not even thinking initially that I was going to transfer in my first year, I didn't start thinking about it until late spring, because I really wanted to give the school a chance, not just in season, but out of season. Maybe I liked it during the later part of the year, which ended up being a mistake because, as you probably are laughing to know, there's not supposed to be transfers during that time. Your options are very limited. Essentially, what happened was the coach that was at LMU, Tom Black, he left and went to co-coach at Georgia. And when he left, there was a ripple effect, and some players transferred out, including Sarah Sponsel, who went to UCLA, and that opened up a scholarship in my position at LMU. And they needed a hitter, and I needed a school, and they were in California, and it kind of just stars aligned for
Yeah.
me.
And so you get there. What did you? And obviously you stayed, right? And I'm sure it wasn't perfect. No place is perfect. There's no such thing as that. But what did you notice about your experience as a human, right? And forget about on the court, but when all that culture is not right, when there's bad interaction with coaches, it creates anxiety. It creates, oh my God, I don't want to be a part. Like, it's just not a fun place to be. When you get to a place where it was different, how did that change the dynamic of your life on a daily basis?
Yeah, I think not to sound dramatic, but I felt like I went from being depressed to, oh, like I enjoy going to practice again. I enjoy hanging out with my teammates on the weekend again because they're not depressed. I'm not depressed. Like we're all happy. We're all excited to be here. It totally changes everything. You get to live day to day looking forward to it instead of dreading it.
Yeah.
Ultimately, yeah.
Well, it's this is a really important conversation because I was coaching men at the time when I first, my wife was still in school, and she called me and told me that she wanted to get into a car accident so that she didn't have to go to practice that day. And I'm like, what in the hell are you talking about? Like, I'd never heard of anything like that before. And
Right.
she starts explaining to me what she and her teammates are going through and this relationship that they have with the sport that they grew up loving and now dreading it because of the way that they were being treated on a daily basis and the interaction that they had. It was a foreign concept to me. I now I understand it significantly better. I've talked to many more women than men, but men have it too. But many women who have experienced this, and it's horrible. Like, it is not what athletics is supposed to be. That is not remotely close to what your experience is supposed to be. And so for coaches out there, remember, like, you do not treat your kids this way. You do not want them walking around feeling like this. And did you experience some of that as a player and the relief that you felt when you got to the new place? Just the kind of a new lease on life?
Yeah. It's really interesting. I want to clarify. I actually was treated very well at my
You
first
were.
school, but it was the treatment of my teammates
Mm.
that ultimately just did not sit right with me, that ate at me. And so it's not always direct, right? It's the
Yeah.
way that your coach treats not you as an individual, but your team that
Yeah.
ultimately creates your experience.
Yeah. It's the whole dynamic, right? Like, it could be you, it could be someone around you, could be the whole group together. It is you're dealing with human beings,
Right.
and we have feelings, and they are, sometimes feelings in sports we're not supposed to talk about that, but it is something that really, really matters to the young people's experience.
Right. I will say too, you mentioned my grades. My freshman year is probably the only time that I did struggle in school because it just felt like everything in life I felt less motivated about. And when I transferred, uh, not a lot transferred over, and you end up washing actually the grades, at least in my
Yeah.
case. So my GPA got to start over. Not that it was bad, but it wasn't as good as after I transferred, and I was a lot happier.
Yeah. So you get to LMU and you have a great first year, right? Like, I believe first team all conference your first year there. Great statistically, happy. And then when did the injury happen for you
Yeah, it was our very last game of the regular season.
of your first year
Conference.
of your first year there? And you
Yeah,
completely just blow out. Like, if you could, there's nothing left in your knee. I think everything, it was all gone.
all gone. ACL, MCL, meniscus. I even managed to crack my femur.
Oh, congratulations. So you did it all.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the full meal deal on the knee. So when there's so many athletes that go through this, like, what was the immediate thought that went through your brain when when you found out, oh my God, I'm done for a foreseeable future here. What
Yeah.
was with that thought that went through your brain, the emotions that you experienced when you went through that?
Yeah, I think initially you're just kind of shocked, and you don't know how bad it is. My first doctor's visit, it was a very bad injury. So my doctor's like, I don't know to what extent you'll be able to return to play. Where a lot of like just ACLs, there's more of a reassurance. Mine was a lot more complicated. So he didn't make me a lot of promises, which wasn't very reassuring.
Yeah.
I'd say about like 2 months after that, I had this feeling of loss of identity. The one thing that I've always been good at, that I had built my confidence in, was all of a sudden just torn away from me. And now I had to figure out, oh, like, who am I without my sport? Like, who am I, or how do I look cool or feel confident without this thing that I've always just had?
Yeah. It becomes who you are, right? Not what you do.
Right. Right.
And so as you're coaching now, and I'm going to get into that. Well, let's talk about that now. So you're coaching now, and obviously kids go through all sorts of different shapes and sizes, right? Not everybody's going to be as good as you, and some of them are probably have a chance to play higher level somewhere along the way when you're coaching kids. What do you tell them about that identity of that you learned from that experience as being injured and going through what you just described? How do you prepare people for when that moment comes, whether it's injury or I'm done playing, I don't get a college scholarship, or I get a college scholarship and then I'm done? What is the messaging that you provide to young people around that piece?
Right. I think for me, the biggest life lesson that I can give through sport is the idea that your success isn't tied to winning or losing, how good you are compared to someone else, but your ability to continue to learn in the face of failure. So with my kids, I typically try not to reward like bad habits, but they get the point. If they do something the right way and don't score, I am like way more like, that's it, like amazing. And just get them okay with the idea of failing at something and that's still being progress. So
Yeah.
I'd say that's my biggest coaching philosophy, and that's what I try to like pass on to my kids, because um, I feel like that's something that I wish that I had embedded in me a little sooner than I did. That was kind of a breakthrough moment.
It's so good. So we talk about this a lot on the show, that failure is probably the biggest thing that you can learn and how to handle it from sports. And if sports is done correctly, you're going to fail over and over in life. Life is just a series of failures and failures. I just failed at trying to say failure, but of learning how to, in a safe place, be able to prepare for something, maybe not do it perfectly, be corrected and learn from that and come back and do it again. How did you get through that? You're obviously a very confident person. You're now playing in the pros, like your coach, like you're doing all these things. How did you get through that process?
Yeah, I think I had a really great experience in high school. I went to Redondo Union High School, where Coach Tommy Chaffins was my head coach, and we have a really funny relationship and dynamic. He was very, very hard on me my first, I'd say, like year and a half on varsity. So I didn't make varsity as a freshman. Like I said, I was really new. I always tell my kids that I made the freshman team as a
And then you
freshman.
got offered a scholarship at the
The
end of your
next
freshman
year,
year.
right, at the end of the beginning of the next year, whenever it was. But we all have like our learning process, and I think a lot of kids who are good players, they get so emotional about not making varsity if they like do think they deserve to be there. But in my case, like I didn't make it, and he had kind of put me there knowing that I needed the play time. And then the next year, he brought me up and made my life very hard. Just meaning holding me to a really high bar, not in a mean way, but in a way that was like exactly what we're talking about. Giving me a challenge of, let's say, I don't have a perfect set, but I still have the ability to swing on that ball, taking that swing and doing the thing that might not feel comfortable, but is the right choice. And I might fail at it, at the beginning 5 out of 10 times, and then it's 7 out of 10. And now, oh, I'm swinging that ball in the court 9 out of 10 times. And so he's the first coach that I experienced that was rewarding the right idea instead of success,
Mm,
or success in that skill, right?
yeah.
And so we had this moment finally my junior year where again I thought for a while he just hated me because he was so hard on me. I wish I was exaggerating. I came home from practice a couple times crying. I'm like, Mom, I don't understand it. Like I work so hard, he's so hard on me. Maybe he just doesn't like me. And we were playing a match my junior year against our rival high school. We were in a crazy 5-set match, and our seniors just were not getting it done. And I just kind of put the team on my back, and I just decided, let's go for it. And we won. And I'm not joking. Ever since that night, he never gave me a hard time about anything ever again because he was like, you get it. You
Yeah.
finally get it. You understand that like comfort is never going to be there. You chose to be uncomfortable. You chose to go for it. And now we like have a team win because you like overcame that, that fear of failure, like looking cool because
Yeah.
we're going to fail whether we try to avoid it or not.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. Obviously you have, I don't know if you have sought out discomfort, but you've experienced some, and then you chose to switch sports again, right? And I know it still has a volleyball in it, but beach volleyball and indoor volleyball are significantly different. I would imagine, having never played beach volleyball, but I would imagine it's a whole different dynamic, whole different animal. What led you to go from playing indoor to going to beach?
Yeah. At the time that I transferred into LMU, the beach coach, John Mayer, he had approached me and was like, "Hey, like I've watched you play indoor. Is there any chance you played beach growing up?" I was like, "No, but I'd be open to it," because a lot of the girls who played indoor at the time also played beach. That's not the case anymore. Now the sports are very separated, I'd say, at the college level. But when I played, at least my first couple years, there was still a lot of dual sport athletes. Um, and so I told him, I'm like, I'll play in the spring and give it a try. And then I blew up my knee, and I didn't play the next season on the beach. My knee just wasn't ready yet. I tried to play the next year, and then COVID happened. And so ultimately, the first time that I was able to give it a real shot was my senior year. And I kind of, at that point in time, just looked at it as I want to try this. I love the girls on this team. There was a winning culture, and that was just really appealing to me. And I kind of just kept going and fell more and more in love with it.
So I have not talked to anybody about this on the show. You were a student athlete in the middle of COVID collegiately.
Yeah.
What what was that like? I was coaching high school at that time. And it was bizarre, with what went on for those kids at the high school level. What was that like for you guys as a collegiate program, dealing with that as a student, as an athlete, having that just strangeness that was around that time? How did you guys manage that?
Yeah. So it's funny when the decision was made that, they were going to shut everything down. Our team had just boarded a plane to Arizona, and it was so sudden that all of a sudden our coach got the call and he's like, Everyone deboard the plane. Like, we're not going. Like, that's it."
Wow.
And so it was very just like, it felt like almost dystopian. Like, we like unboarded the plane and like went home, and that was that. Like, that was the end of that season. And it was really disappointing. I think, again, if you play for a school that you love and a team that's doing well, I think anyone would be really disappointed. So we just had a lot of Zoom calls as a team and did what we could to stay together. We went through that awkward practicing in masks thing.
Yeah.
Uh, it was kind of a mess, but we just took it a day at a time and ultimately got through it.
So everybody got to see what you look like from the nose up, right? Like, it's so weird. And then the
Exactly.
mask would come down, and then they'd be around your neck, and no one was caring anymore at some point in time. And then pretty soon half the team didn't have masks on. Like, all of that stuff happened for you guys.
100%. And, it was a little bit of a blessing, I think, for me personally in my beach volleyball career because uh, basically the next indoor season was kind of a wash. because it wasn't even going to count. It was going to be like a half season maybe.
Yeah.
And so my indoor coach and my beach coach, we all talked about it. And my indoor coach was like, obviously I want you in our gym this fall, but our beach team has a really good chance of winning conference and like doing well in the national championship, but only if you figure out how to play. So he basically handed me off to John for the fall and let me train with them and kind of figure it out. And sure enough, next spring we were able to win conference, and I think we got like a third in the national championship.
Yeah. So what was that? Didn't quite win it, but get pretty close, right? From a school that's, West Coast Conference, not one of the power now 4, but at that time, Power 5 schools. How gratifying was that for you to take the West Coast Conference and Lyle Marymount and be able to compete at that level and walk away with nearly a championship?
Yeah, so fun. Like I said, that's what drew me to end up playing both sports, was not even because beach volleyball was so appealing to me, but because the team culture and the girls and the coaches were just all like my people. Like I'm like, I
Yeah.
want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Even if it means that, like when I first started, I sucked. My John in my senior speech said, I went to Megan and asked her at the indoor event, like, oh, did you ever play beach growing up, or are you any good? And I was like, no, not really. And he goes, she was right. She wasn't any good. But, by the time he was done with me, I ended up being pretty good. So it's all in good fun now.
That's awesome. So now you still playing in the AVP, correct?
Yeah.
And you coach.
Yeah.
Youth. So when you're playing, and I was a player coach at one point in time in Japan, and I remember the voices that would go through my head. And whose voice do you hear in your head when you're playing, when you maybe don't do something correctly or a mistake happens that you've coached somebody else to do? How much more accountable do you hold yourself to do all the things that you're telling those kids to do when you're out there playing?
That's a great question. I hear my high school coach in my head a lot.
Yeah.
Just because I think that was, again, the time that you're most impressionable is your high school years. It's when you develop your confidence as a player and ultimately your mindset, which is why I think coaching at that level is really important, and how you talk to your kids.
Yeah.
And then I would say the other voice, I had a great opportunity to work with the USA developmental coaches when my first year of beach, and two coaches, Jose and Fiapo, and whenever I tape the ball on the net, I hear in my mind, in Fiapo's voice, no tape, Megan, because I jump super high. There's absolutely no reason that any ball I hit should be anywhere near the tape. So I do have a couple of those. I know what you're talking about.
Do your kids ever come watch you play? The players that you coach?
Yeah.
Do you feel a sense of okay, I've taught these kids I better hold myself accountable because they're watching to make sure that I'm not making mistakes here that I'm teaching them to do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a feeling of that. It's like, oh, I want to live out all the stuff I'm talking about on a daily basis.
Yeah, I remember when I played in Japan and was coaching the team I was playing on, and remember thinking to myself, I'm about to tell someone to get in stance and defend and rebound. I better get my ass in stance and defend and rebound, or no one's going to listen to me ever again.
Yep.
So you transition, you're in the pro circuit, and now you're coaching. And what's the name of you guys' club again? Surfside. And it's the club you played in, right? When you were growing up?
So my very first year of club was at Surfside. Yeah, very full circle.
So I want to, you're the first coach that I've talked to, or person in athletics that I've talked to, that's actually involved in coaching in the club, at the club level. What is what's your philosophy or the club's philosophy? And I don't want to get you in trouble here, but what is the philosophy in your club? And how do you guys treat kids that want to be multi-sport athletes? Do you guys believe in that? Or do you have hey, you need to specialize by a certain age? How do you guys think about that in your world?
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, I think that it's very difficult to play club in multiple sports. I will say that. So, I would say under like high school, I think play what you want. m- Maybe make it more recreationally and make sure your kid finds a sport that they really love. And then once that's the case, I would say high school is around the time that if your child really does want to specialize, that would be the time to do it. And I think consistency and showing up is really what makes girls good and able to pursue at the next level. So while I obviously am a big supporter of doing multiple sports, I do think that at the club level, if it's something that your kid really wants, they need to be showing up consistently and making sure that they're able to make all their obligations.
So I'm going to stay out of getting into a debate with you over club sports. I've watched football and basketball mostly, and the thing that makes me the angriest, both as a parent and as when I was coaching and collegiately, was going to club events and watching these people scream at their players and the kind of the culture around what those, we're going to play, we're going to practice for a week and then we're going to go play for 30 days without any practices in between during that viewing period, and kind of the bad habits that come from all of that. When you were looking for your club, and now if you're talking to a parent that's not in your area that could come play for you, what should a parent be looking for when they're trying to find the right fit? And that's same thing for, collegiately someday, but as they go through this process of finding a club, what questions should they ask? What should they be looking for in a club program, regardless of the sport, but specific to yours?
Yeah, I think one is make sure that your child likes the girls on the team and connects with the coach well. I think those two dynamics are very important. And then from there, you got to create your own priority list. You have to
Mm.
determine, is this for fun or is it for recruitment? Because basically, the team you would choose from there becomes really different. I think that there is value in playtime, but it's like a ratio. How much playtime to how good of a team? Because ultimately, if the goal is recruiting, you need to make sure that your daughter is on a team high enough to have visibility. But at the same time, if let's say she's a underclassman, let's say eighth grade freshman, at that point in time where they're not quite being recruited yet, those would be the years that it's like I'm looking at playtime, I'm looking at coaches who can help me get better. Um, and so I don't know, it's so personal girl to girl, but that would be kind of the things that I would think about.
Yeah, I love the development piece. So I need to be developed, right? Everybody needs to be developed all the way through until you're ever done. You're always trying to get better. How do you find out if a program is a development program versus just we want to get as many people into the program as we possibly can so we make as much money as we possibly can, which in the basketball world happens over and over and over again, which is why the system is so broken. How do I find out if that club is like I'd be a perfect example. I don't know anything about volleyball. And if my daughter had been a volleyball player instead of a basketball player, how would I have been able to ask the right questions or find out if that club had my kid's best interest in development at heart?
Yeah. I think that ultimately comes down to gut feeling about whether or not, again, your coach, your club director is being transparent with you. I think that look for honesty in terms of like, hey, like we love your daughter. She's great on our team. She's going to have to compete for a spot. Or on this team, she like, get to play the whole time. But on our team, like, competing against another good player in the position might develop her more. So I think it's just really paying attention to how transparent they are with you. Um, I wish I had a better answer, to be
Yeah.
honest. I think it just comes down to like coach is up there for me on the list because ultimately it doesn't matter what the club's philosophy is. Just like it doesn't matter what, let's say, a university's philosophy is if the coach doesn't have and share that same philosophy.
So I get into a bad situation. You've been through this, right? And you made a decision to leave collegiately. and I'm a 14 or 15-year-old kid, and I'm experiencing some of the things that you experienced or my wife experienced or kids all over the country experience in a situation, I think people are afraid to leave because of what that looks like I'm a club jumper, right? From one to the next. And would you tell a kid about, I'm in a bad situation? And I actually had a parent reach out to me to talk to me about this a couple weeks ago. But what would you tell a family that their child is in a situation that they deem bad, but they're worried that it's going to look like they're leaving and they don't want that perception? What would you tell that family?
I'd say the first thing that I always tell parents is make sure that you have set up a meeting with you, your child, and the coach. Because I know from just experience myself and others, oftentimes 14-year-olds, they don't always know necessarily if they are in, like you said, a bad situation. Obviously, this is a wide spectrum. Um, but what they could be saying isn't always what's happening. So have that conversation and make sure you confirm what is going on and make sure the messaging doesn't change once you're in a meeting with the coach from your child.
Great point.
But that being said, let's say everything is the way it is. If it is a situation where your child is being verbally abused or teammates are being verbally abused, I'd bring it to the club director. I think that there is some validity, and let's just say they're not enjoying the experience fully, but there's nothing really bad going on, because that happens too sometimes, right? Like they're unhappy with just like, I'm not getting as much playing time as I want, or like coach is really hard on me, not in a like abusive way, but maybe like my high school coach, right?
Yeah.
Where he's just holding me to a really high bar, and being uncomfortable doesn't feel good. And
Yeah.
sometimes those coaches though are going to help your daughter or son grow the most.
Mm.
So I think as a parent, like your instinct, right, is to make any discomfort go away. But instead of having an emotional reaction, I think try to get to the bottom of it. Of, is this something that I need to take my kid out of, or is this something that might be good to let them go through it?
Yeah, it's a great point. Discomfort versus abuse, right? Like
Right.
the discomfort's healthy. Like it is that failure, that continuing to grow. Growing is uncomfortable, but the way that the coach gets you to get there is what we're talking about and what
Right.
matters. Like, is it done
Yeah.
in a way that's positive and corrective and helping you be constructive in your growth? Or is it degrading and tearing you down so you're not going to grow? Like trying to really get to the heart of that.
Right. Because like I said, I was in a similar situation where I was really uncomfortable for a year and a half, and my parents were just like, hands off, like let's just see what happens. And it ended up being, I would argue, like the most positive, influential thing that could have happened to me in my volleyball career.
Yeah, that's great. So last thing, before we go on to the what we always do at the end, your brain, right? So you've been through a whole bunch
Yeah.
of stuff as a player, injury, transfer, like all this stuff. How did you get yourself? And we talk about a lot about mental performance on this show, and we have a whole series of episodes that are about mental training. What was the important thing for you, and how did you go about flipping your brain to get yourself ready to play? And now you're playing again, and like every time that you go out to play, like what do you do to get yourself ready?
That's a great question. I mean, been exposed to a lot of sports psychologists over my years. LMU did a really good job bringing a lot in. I'd say some of my things that I constantly lean on is self-talk and being really aware of how I talk to myself, because you spend a lot of time with yourself, and especially in the sport of beach volleyball, where you're touching like every play, almost every point is your fault if you lose it to some extent.
Yeah.
So something that I try to do is like treat myself like I would a teammate instead of myself is something I
Mm,
remind myself. Um,
that's such a good statement. I love that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because it's hard. Mentally,
Yeah.
it's hard, and
Yeah.
you're gonna lose more than you're gonna win.
Yeah.
There's so few tournaments that I I win. I might win some games, but most of them are going to end, on a loss. So
Yeah.
being okay with that. I'd say another thing that is has been so important that I think my injury helped me do is to compartmentalize my life.
Mm,
Um, just because volleyball isn't going well doesn't mean my whole life's not going well, or letting it, derail my personal relationships. Just because I'm upset about the sport I do. It's something I do. It's not who I am.
yeah.
And I'd say the last thing, and this is also kind of a self-talk piece, but uh, there are so many high pressure moments and uncomfortable moments. And kind of a mantra that I've told myself just over the years is, I am good in high pressure situations. I love being put on the line, because those moments are what the sport is all about. Because I might not succeed in all of those moments, but that's where you get your highs, right? And that's like ultimately where you find a lot of joy in the sport. So not fearing those moments, being like, I'm excited I get to be put in this situation.
That's so good. I want my daughter to play for you. So, the I really appreciate you coming on the show. This has been very informative for me, and I think our audience is going to love it. But we always end with two very important things. Number one, you have to tell me a dad joke. So, what's your
Yeah.
dad joke? See if I can not laugh, which will be the first time I've never laughed. So, no pressure here.
Oh gosh. Okay. No, there's so much pressure.
Oh, I love these.
What do you call fake spaghetti?
What do you call fake spaghetti? I have no idea.
An impasta.
Oh, I love it. They're so good. I have a full, just so you, I have
You
a
have a full
full,
book?
I have a full book over here, and if I'm ever having a bad day, I just go to the dad joke book, and it
There
pulls
you
me
go.
right out of, right out of my negative space. Okay, now the important part. So, I always, when I was coaching, I would have my players build a future crystal ball, a time machine
Yeah.
for their lives in the future of what they wanted to build and what they wanted to create for themselves. I'm going to do the opposite with you, and we're going to do a reverse time machine, go back in time. And at 14 years old, or whatever age you want to go back to, what advice, knowing everything that you've been through, all the stuff that we discussed and all the stuff we didn't discuss, what advice would you give your young 14, 13, 12, whatever age you want to self?
I think I'd tell myself you can do hard things,
Mm.
and just like really believe that. Yeah, because hard things happen. So like, being told like you can do them, I think would have been really nice to hear.
Oh, that's great. Well, Megan, thank you so much for coming on the show. I have
Yeah,
enjoyed this immensely. How do people find you or the AVP? Like, let's pitch that a little bit. How do people
absolutely.
support what is going on in that world?
Yeah. So I play on the AVP, which is the Domestic Beach Volleyball Pro Tour. I also play for Team USA internationally. You all can find me on Instagram at Megan J Rice. On the AVP, I represent the New York Nitro. Our next event is next weekend in Austin, Texas. So anyone who's in Austin wants to go to the event and wants more details can reach out to me on that. That's about it.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Really enjoyed the conversation. Hope to meet you in person someday. But
Yeah,
thank you for your time. I greatly appreciate it.
absolutely. Thank you. It's
All
great
right.
talking to you.
Take care. All right, Anthony Leverett's back here. Just wrapped up the interview with Megan Rice, and what an enjoyable conversation. We touched on a whole bunch of things, but the two things I really want to cover that resonated with me. She made a statement, and we talk about self-talk all the time, and how important it is to be kind to yourself. But she said it in a way that I thought was really, really well said. Treat yourself like you would treat a teammate, or you would want a teammate to treat you. And there's so much negative noise that goes on outwardly. Coaches are coaching you and being constructive to you, hopefully, but it can feel critical, and you're going to miss shots or make a mistake or hit the ball out of bounds or whatever it is that's going on. Really try to figure out how to have a relationship with yourself and your sport in a positive way, in the way that you would support another teammate. I think if you can figure that out, you're going to take way more pressure off yourself. You're going to be able to get over things quicker. And I thought it was just a really good way of encapsulating how we should think about ourselves as we are performing and practicing within our sport. And then the other thing that we covered is club sports, and my feeling from what Megan's experience was as a player in it, and now she's back coaching within that club, is that they have a really positive experience there. That she felt it as a player, and helped her get to where she wanted to go as a volleyball player, and now she's doing the same thing within that program for others. Unfortunately, that is not always the case within the club sports world. And I have watched it over and over and over again, both now in football with watching my son's football, watching my daughter play club basketball. And then when I was coaching, obviously watched quite a bit of club basketball in my life. And there are so many negative experiences happening out there because coaches are either not prepared to coach, aren't trained to coach, don't have the right perspective about why they're coaching, doing it for the money, not trained well enough to do it. And so it becomes a negative experience. And as parents, we're sitting there watching this and wondering, okay, what's the right thing to do? How do I manage this? I don't want my kid having this experience. I want them to have a great experience with the sport that they're participating in. And I think the first thing that Megan talked about, and I agree with deeply, is before you get a kid involved in a club, go interview that club. Go find out what kind of experience that kid is going to have before you put them in there. Go and have conversations with kids. Is this a development program? Is this just about winning? What is my expectation, and what should it be before I start paying you money to coach my kid? What should I expect out of this? And try to dive deep into that. And then if a coach doesn't want to answer those things, or you get a bad feeling from them in that conversation, don't put your kid in there. And then if you do all that due diligence and it's great, obviously stay. But if you are sitting and watching and it gets to the point where this is a negative experience, and I don't mean they're not playing enough. That's not what I'm talking about. They're being demeaned. They're coming home unhappy. They don't like the sport anymore. They are their self-talk is matching what you're seeing come out of their coaches' mouths. Get them out of that program and find a place that is going to support them in the way that you see you care about development, both in your home and in whatever sport they're playing, that they match up. And it doesn't have to be identical to how you would do it in your home, but there's got to be something that is matching morally in the way these coaches treat your kid. And if it does not match up, do not be afraid to get them out of the sport. The damage that can happen to them versus the potential possibility they could have by staying for some advancement in their career as a young person, the damage is worse. Get them out. Oh, there's my soapbox on that topic. I'll get back to that at another time as well. But I think it's a really important conversation. As always, if you like what we're doing, please share the show with your friends, rate us, like us, find us on LinkedIn or social media, reach out to us, give us some feedback. We are enjoying this process immensely and hope you are as well. Until next time, make it a great day.